Leah had never felt more out of place than the night she walked into the grand ballroom of the Harrington estate. Crystal chandeliers hung like frozen waterfalls from the high ceiling, and soft music drifted through the air as servers in crisp uniforms offered champagne flutes. She smoothed the simple navy dress she had chosen, a small rebellion, against the designer gowns all around her, and took a steadying breath. This was her first charity gala since graduating college, and she had come with a simple goal: meet people who believed that even the tiniest acts of kindness could change the world. She never expected to meet the man who would change hers. Across the room, Marcus Harrington leaned against a marble pillar, one hand tucked in his tuxedo pocket, the other holding a glass of water. He looked every bit the reluctant son of Victor Harrington, the billionaire industrialist who controlled half the city's skyline. Marcus was tall but awkward in his suit, his dark hair mussed as if he had run a hand through it in worry. Was Plainsome whispered ugly, but to Leah, he looked like someone carrying a secret burden. When their eyes met, he offered a shy nod that made her heart flutter. She nodded back, then turned away, cheeks warm. Leah moved toward the buffet, hoping to calm her nerves with something small to eat. A waiter offered her shrimp knaps, and she accepted one, her thoughts drifting to why she had accepted the invitation at all. She knew her own life had been ordinary, living with her grandmother, volunteering at the community center, dreaming of making a difference. She did not belong among high heels and tuxedos, yet here she was. She brushed aside her doubts and lifted her chin. If kindness was the measure of a person, she reminded herself, then she belonged anywhere. A voice at her side startled her. "Mind if I join you?" Marcus stood there, offering a small smile. His voice was soft, gentle, with a hint of hesitation. She managed a polite smile in return. "Please." They moved toward a quiet corner near an indoor fountain.
Waters.
Gentle trickles seemed to whisper secrets as they sat on a low marble bench. Leah studied him, surprised at how comfortable she felt so quickly. They spoke of simple things at first: the taste of the food, the music, the charities work. Marcus admitted he often felt trapped by his father's expectations that he followed the family business. Leah confessed she volunteered at the same charity but in a different city. She told him stories of the families she helped, the laughter of children at the shelter, and the way a small gift could light a person's eyes. Marcus listened intently, his plain features lighting up with genuine interest. People around them whispered, noting that Marcus rarely spoke with strangers, especially ones like Leah. As the night deepened, Leah realized that she had never looked at Marcus twice before. He was not handsome by society's standards. His nose was slightly crooked, his ears a bit large, his hands broad and workmanlike. Yet he had an inner kindness that shone through every time he smiled, every time he asked a thoughtful question. Leah felt a warmth spread through her chest. For the first time, she wondered if beauty was about more than skin deep. Before they parted, Marcus asked for her number in a voice that trembled with hope. Leah handed him a small card she carried for such emergencies, and he slipped it into his jacket pocket. As she walked away, she caught sight of Victor Harrington watching from a distance, his expression unreadable. But Leah focused on the gentle curve of Marcus's shy smile, her heart beating faster. Over the next few days, Leah could not stop thinking about Marcus. She replayed their conversation in her mind, smiling at the way his eyes lit up when she described the charity's work. On her second meeting with him, at a small coffee shop far from the opulence of the estate, Leah discovered layers of his personality that deepened her admiration. Marcus loved old books, especially dusty tomes on history and philosophy, rare records, and played piano in secret. He confessed that he had always felt judged by his looks, but found solace in art and the quiet joy of helping others. Leah shared her own struggles, her family's financial troubles, grandmother's health worries, the fear that her small efforts might never matter. Marcus reached across the table and gently squeezed her hand. In that moment, everything. Outside the shop, the honking cars, the busy pedestrians faded away. As days turned into weeks, their bond grew stronger. They met for evening walks in the park, leaning close under street lamps that cast soft circles of light on the pavement. They laughed over ice cream cones, sometimes spilling a bit onto their fingers. Leah showed him how to paint in watercolors, while he taught her to play simple melodies on his old upright piano. They shared secrets. Marcus told Leah about the pressure of inheritance, the cold meetings with board members who saw him as a disappointment.
Out.
Leah told him about her dream to open a community art center, a place where children could explore creativity without fear or judgment. Each story wove them closer together, but not everyone was pleased. Leah's friends questioned why she was spending time with that Harrington's son. They exchanged worried glances when she mentioned his name. At work, a colleague whispered that Victor would never approve of someone like Leah, that she should be careful not to get her heart broken. Leah felt a sting of doubt, but she pushed it aside. She had learned that real courage was following her heart, even when others did not understand. Meanwhile, at the Harrington mansion, Marcus faced his own storm. His father invited him to a private dinner, the long table laid out with heavy silverware. In crystal glasses, Victor spoke in a measured tone, warning Marcus that his charity work was admirable, but did not suit the family's image. He hinted at introducing Marcus to a socialite the next season, someone from a renowned family. Marcus's jaw tightened, but he remained polite. When he returned to his private study, he found the card Leah had given him, a reminder of the warmth he felt in her presence. He vowed that night to choose his own path. A week later, under a canopy of fairy lights in the rose garden of the estate, Marcus arranged a small surprise. He led Leah along a winding path lined with lanterns, each one carrying a handwritten note. The first said, "To the woman who sees beyond the surface," the next, "Who hears the stories behind the silence," and so on, each note revealing a part of his heart. At the final lantern, Leah found Marcus on one knee, not in a grand ceremony, but in a quiet, genuine moment. He pulled a simple ring from his pocket and asked her to marry him. Leah's eyes filled with tears as she nodded, words caught in her throat. The estate staff gasped when news of the proposal spread. Socialites raised their eyebrows. Journalists would have loved the irony. The plain son of a billionaire bet everything on a modest, young woman who dared to see beauty and kindness. Leah and Marcus did not care. In each other's eyes, they found a truth that shimmered brighter than any diamond or headline. As they walked back through the rose garden hand in hand, Leah felt the world shift around her. She realized that this bold choice, marrying the man everyone called ugly, was the beginning of a love story that would teach them both the greatest lesson, that true beauty lives in the heart. The wedding day arrived with all the glory and sparkle expected from the Harrington family. Cameras flashed outside the grand iron gates as luxury cars rolled into the estate one after another. Reporters stood at a distance, hoping to catch a glimpse of the bride and groom. For the rich and powerful, this wasn't just a marriage, it was news. And for Leah, it felt like stepping into a world she had only seen in movies. Leah stood in front of a tall mirror in her dressing room. The silk gown she wore was simple, but elegant, unlike the glittery designer dresses the family had offered. She had politely refused them all. She didn't want to look like someone else on her special day. She wanted to look like herself. Her hair was pinned back with tiny pearl clips, and her hands trembled slightly as she held a bouquet of soft white roses. Her grandmother, seated nearby, watched her with teary eyes and whispered, "You look just like your mother on our wedding day." Leah smiled at her grandmother, but deep inside she felt nervous. It wasn't the marriage she feared she was. Sure of her love for Marcus, it was everything else. The whispers, the judging eyes, the people who didn't believe in them. But she told herself again and again, this is my life. My choice. In the grand garden, hundreds of guests filled rows of golden chairs, their designer clothes shining in the sunlight. Leah walked slowly down the white carpet, arm in arm with her grandmother. People turned their heads, some smiling politely, others whispering behind fans. But she kept her eyes on Marcus, who stood at the altar with a nervous smile and tears shining in his eyes. Marcus looked different that day, not in appearance, but in confidence. For once, he stood tall, proud of who he was, and proud of the woman he was about to marry. His suit was tailored, but he hadn't let the stylist change him too much. His messy hair was neatly combed, his crooked tie slightly off-center. But Leah loved it just the way it was, as they exchanged vows. Marcus spoke with quiet strength. Leah, I promise to always see the beauty in you, the same way you saw it in me when no one else did. His words touched hearts. Some guests wiped away tears. Leah held his hands, and when it was her turn, she whispered back, "And I promise to walk with you through every shadow and every light." The ceremony ended with gentle applause. Doves were released into the sky, and music began to play. Photographers snapped pictures of the couple as they shared their first kiss as husband and wife. But even as they smiled for the cameras, both Leah and Marcus knew the real journey was just beginning. At the reception, the air was filled with laughter and clinking glasses. The dining hall was decorated with white roses, golden candles, and chandeliers that sparkled like stars. Guests were served a 5-course meal, with each dish carefully prepared by celebrity chefs. A live orchestra played soft music in the background. It was beautiful, but Leah felt like a stranger in the middle of it all. She noticed how people looked at her with curious eyes, like she was part of a story they didn't quite believe. Some smiled, others didn't bother hiding their surprise. A group of women near the chocolate fountain whispered and giggled. One even said loudly, "She's brave, I'll give her that." To marry him just for love? Leah looked away, pretending not to hear. She found Marcus standing near a large window, looking out into the night. She walked up to him and slipped her hand into his. He didn't say anything, but he gently squeezed her fingers, like he knew exactly what she was feeling. Later that night, Marcus's older brother, Adam, approached them. He was the opposite of Marcus, confident, stylish, always surrounded by admirers. He raised his glass and said, "Well, I didn't think this day would come, but here we are."
Are you surprised?
Us all, Marcus. Cheers to ... love. His tone was polite, but his eyes held something else, something that Leah couldn't quite name. Was it amusement? Doubt? Jealousy? Leah smiled politely and thanked him. But she knew some of Marcus's family still saw her as an outsider.
How to?
Them, she wasn't rich or famous or part of their polished world. She was just an ordinary girl who somehow ended up in a billionaire's wedding photos. Even Victor Harrington, the father of the groom, had been quiet the whole day. He had greeted Leah with a forced smile, given a short speech during the reception, and then disappeared into his private study. People said he had always wanted Marcus to marry someone who could improve the family image, not someone from a small neighborhood with no famous name or title. But what they didn't know was that Victor had watched Leah closely over the past few months. He had tested her kindness, observed her calm nature, and even sent people to learn more about her past. Though he never said it out loud, part of him feared she was just after money. But no matter how hard he looked, he found nothing false, only truth. Only a woman who loved his son when no one else saw value in him. After the guests had left, the music had faded, Leah and Marcus returned to a quiet part of the estate where a smaller celebration was prepared just for them. A garden lit with fairy lights, a simple table for two, and a soft breeze that carried the smell of blooming flowers. Marcus poured her a glass of sparkling juice and said, "I'm sorry today wasn't perfect. I know it was hard." Leah smiled at him. It was beautiful, not because of the food or the flowers, but because I married you. They sat together under the stars, speaking of dreams and plans. Marcus talked about building something outside of his father's shadow, something meaningful. Leah spoke of starting a project for children in poor communities, where art and stories could help them heal. They promised to support each other, to lift each other when the world tried to pull them down. That night, in the quiet of the garden, Leah realized something. She didn't just marry Marcus, the man. She had married his journey, his pain, his struggles, his hopes. And in return, Marcus didn't just marry Leah, the woman. He had married her spirit, strong, honest, and full of light. They would face challenges, no doubt. The world would continue to whisper. Some would never understand why a girl like Leah chose a man like Marcus. But in their hearts, they both knew the answer, because love is not about perfection, it's about truth. And theirs was real as the last candle flickered, and the stars watched silently from above. Leah leaned her head on Marcus's shoulder and whispered, "Let's promise each other something." "What is it?" he asked softly. "No matter how rich or poor, No matter how loud or quiet the world becomes, we'll keep seeing each other. Truly, the way we are now. Marcus nodded, holding her closer. Always. And just like that. The second chapter of their story began not with noise or glitter, but with two hearts choosing to walk the world together, one honest step at a time. After the wedding, Leah moved into the Harrington estate. It was a beautiful and massive place, with long marble hallways, tall windows, and rooms filled with paintings that cost more than her childhood home. Everything sparkled, floors, chandeliers, even the silver spoons in the dining room. But despite all the beauty, Leah sometimes felt like she was living in a museum, not a home. The staff was polite but distant. The housemaids bowed their heads whenever she passed, and the chef always waited for permission before preparing meals. Leah missed the warm noise of her grandmother's kitchen, the smell of lentils cooking, and the soft radio playing in the background. In the mansion, everything was too quiet, too perfect. Marcus, on the other hand, seemed at peace. He gave Leah a tour of the house, showing her the library where he used to hide as a boy, the greenhouse where he tried to grow tomatoes, and the music room with the old piano he loved. She could see that even though he had grown up in this grand place, he had always lived in the background, never the favorite, never in the spotlight. One evening, while Leah was reading in the library, she heard the soft sound of piano music. Curious, she followed it and found Marcus sitting alone, playing a gentle tune. His back was to her, and for a few minutes he didn't know she was there. She listened quietly, feeling the emotion in every note. When he finished, she clapped. Softly, Marcus turned, a little embarrassed. "I didn't know you were there." "That was beautiful," she said, walking over to sit beside him. "Why don't you play more often?" He shrugged. "People usually expect different things from me. Business, numbers, meetings, music. Doesn't impress them, but it moves people," Leah whispered. "And that's what matters." In the weeks that followed, Leah began exploring other parts of Marcus's world. One day, while organizing books in the library, she came across a locked drawer in his desk. She didn't open it, of course, but her curiosity grew. Later that night, she gently asked Marcus about it. He hesitated, then smiled. "I want to show you something," he said. He led her to the garage, where instead of luxury cars, a small room in the back was filled with boxes of clothes, toys, and books. On the walls were photos of smiling children, old buildings turned into shelters, and young students in uniforms. Leah looked around in surprise. "What is all this?" Marcus looked a little shy. "It's what I've been doing for years, quietly. I support orphanages, schools, clean water projects. I didn't want my name to distract people, so I'd do it without attention." Eyes filled with tears. "Why didn't you tell me?" "I wanted you to love me for me, not for what I do," he replied softly. Leah hugged him tightly. At that moment, she realized that the world had judged Marcus unfairly for so long based on looks, money, and status. But underneath it all was a man with a heart bigger than any mansion. She decided to join him. Together, they started visiting the places he supported. They spent afternoons reading stories to children in shelters and handing out meals at food banks. Leah taught art classes to young girls who had never held a paintbrush before, while Marcus helped fix broken desks and leaky roofs. In those simple moments, Leah saw Marcus shine in a way she had never seen before. He laughed with children, listened to their stories, and treated every person with respect. She fell in love with him all over again, not just as her husband, but as a partner in kindness. Back at the estate, however, not everyone was happy with this new chapter. Marcus's stepmother, a sharp-tongued woman named Celeste, began to make comments during family dinners. "Marcus, you were invited to the city gala. Why didn't you go?" she asked one evening. "I was helping Leah paint." "A mural at the children's hospital," he replied calmly. Celeste raised her eyebrows. "That's generous. But don't forget, people expect certain things from a Harrington." Leah tried to smile politely, but it hurt. She knew they didn't understand. They believed luxury events, press appearances, and showing off wealth were more important than helping people. Victor Harrington also stayed distant. though he had not openly opposed the marriage anymore. He rarely spoke to Leah. He watched her with eyes that were hard to read, sometimes curious, sometimes critical. He had spent years shaping his empire and expected his sons to carry the same image. But Marcus was different, and Leah made him even more so. One afternoon, Victor invited Leah to his office. It was the first time they had spoken alone since the wedding. "Sit," he said, motioning to a leather chair. "I want to understand you." Leah nodded, keeping her voice calm. "Of course. I've built this family's name from the ground up," Victor said. "People respect us. They expect class, strength, vision. When my son married you, I was worried. Not because of who you are, but because of how the world sees you." Leah listened quietly. "But I've been watching. And I see that you care," he continued slowly. "Still, love isn't enough in our world. People judge. Quickly and harshly. Can you handle that?" Leah took a deep breath. "I didn't marry Marcus to be in your world, sir. I married him because I see him, the real him. And I'll stand beside him not because of your name, but because of his heart." Victor looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded. "We'll see." That evening, Marcus returned home to find Leah sitting on the garden bench, looking at the sky. He sat beside her, sensing something was on her mind. "Your father spoke to me today," she said softly. He frowned. "What did he say?" Leah smiled. "He's watching, still judging, but maybe also beginning to understand." Out a quiet laugh. "He's a tough one." Leah rested her head on his shoulder. "Let him be. We'll keep doing what we believe in." And they did. Together, they began planning something bigger, a network of learning centers for children in poor neighborhoods. Marcus started using his influence to gather support from kind-hearted business people, while Leah focused on designing colorful, welcoming spaces for kids to learn and grow. One night, while working late on the project, Leah found an old journal in one of Marcus's desk drawers. Inside were pages of handwritten thoughts, dreams, and drawings. One sketch caught her Aja's small house with a garden and children playing outside. Below it, Marcus had written, "A place where everyone is seen, even the forgotten ones." She closed the journal slowly, her heart full. That was the man she had married. The man the world had once called ugly, but who had built a life filled with beauty, quiet, gentle, and full of love. Their journey was just getting started. And though the road ahead would have its challenges, they had each other. And that, Leah knew, was the greatest gift of all. Victor Harrington sat at the head of the long mahogany table, his face drawn and pale. Around him, the board members of Harrington Industries shifted in their seats. The room was tense, the air heavy with worry. On the table lay copies of a report that threatened to undo years of work. Victor tapped the papers with a silver pen. He cleared his throat and spoke in a low, measured voice. "Gentlemen, we are facing a breach. Our new project in Southeast Asia has hit legal trouble. Regulators are asking questions, and investors are pulling back. We cannot afford more damage." A tall man in a dark suit leaned forward. "Sir, the scandal is serious. If this goes public, our stock will plummet. We need decisive action," another board member added. "Perhaps Marcus could step in with his connections. He has influence in charitable circles that might help soften the blow." Victor's eyes flickered. Thought of his son's work, quiet, true, uncompromising. He wanted Marcus to focus on charity, not business, and yet here was a chance to keep his empire safe. Later that afternoon, Victor called Marcus to his private study. The walls were lined with leather-bound books, but today the books felt like shadows pressing in. Marcus entered, his suit neat, but his shoulders tense. His father did not offer a greeting. Instead, he pointed toward two chairs. Marcus sat, heart beating fast. Victor handed him a folder. Inside were contracts and share certificates tied to a rival charity network. Marcus's eyes widened. He recognized the crest on the papers, the same one he had quietly supported for years. "Marcus," Victor began, voice hard, "you have built something outside this family's vision, to hold controlling shares in this network. I cannot have your charity work undermining our corporate stability. Choose. You can transfer those shares to me, or you can remove yourself from all family interests. Marcus's jaw clenched. He had expected resistance to his work, but never an ultimatum like this. His quiet projects, born from compassion, now threatened his place in the world he was born into. As Marcus rose to speak, Leah slipped quietly into the study. She'd come with tea for him, but the tension in the room stopped her in the doorway. She watched, heart pounding, as Marcus stood firm. "Father," he said, voice steady but filled with hurt, "I cannot give up what I have built. Those children depend on this network. I will not abandon them." Victor's hands trembled, stared at his son, seeing a resolve he had not noticed before. After a long moment, Victor turned away, eyes clouded. "Then you leave me no choice," he said softly. Leah understood that look. She slipped out and hurried down the hallway to find a quiet corner. As she passed the servants' quarters, a young maid caught her eye and handed her a plain envelope, without a word. Inside was a thick packet of documents and a note that read, "The truth must be known. Open this tonight." Leah's hands shook as she picked up the papers. She felt a surge of dread and curiosity. She slipped the envelope into her dress pocket and continued on, trying to appear calm. That evening, in the quiet of their shared study, Leah handed the envelope to Marcus. Soft lamplight revealed his surprised expression. He opened the packet to find evidence of his own work laid bare, financial reports, personal letters testifying to his donations, and proof that his charity network had grown larger than any in their father's foundation. The final page was a declaration that Marcus held a majority stake in the rival network. Leah watched as Marcus read, tears gathering. "I did this too." "Keep it safe," he whispered. "I used my own funds and borrowed money so no one could tie it to the Harrington name." Leah's heart ached for him. She touched his hand. "You trusted people to keep your secret, but now the secret is out." Marcus pressed his forehead into his palm. "My father will feel betrayed. The board will see me as a threat." Leah stood and moved to his side, wrapping her arms around him. "We will face this together," she said quietly. "You have done good, Marcus. It cannot be taken away." He leaned into her, finding comfort in her unwavering support. After a few moments, Marcus pulled back and looked into Leah's eyes. "We need a plan," he said. They spent the night drafting a statement, preparing for questions, and deciding. On their next move, Marcus would call a press conference at noon, admitting the truth and explaining why he had done it. Leah would stand by him, sharing her own experiences of working in those projects. They knew the world would judge them, but they believed honesty would win respect. The next morning, as the sun rose pale over the city, news of the upcoming press conference leaked. By mid-morning, tabloids exploded with headlines. "Billionaire's son hid charity empire," and "Harrington heir, a rebel philanthropist." Social media lit up with mixed reactions. Some users mocked Marcus's appearance and called him a fool for risking his inheritance. Others praised him as a hero, a man who used his privilege to help those in need. The online world was alive with debate. In the boardroom, Victor watched the chaos with cold eyes. Share prices dipped, then steadied as investors waited for the conference. Victor had expected a public storm, but he saw something else too. People were moved by Marcus's work. He glimpsed articles calling for more leaders to follow Marcus's example. The tension in his chest eased slightly. He realized that his son's quiet projects had more power than any corporate deal. At exactly noon, Marcus and Leah stepped up to the podium in a small conference room, filled with cameras and reporters. Marcus wore simple clothing rather than a suit. His hair was neatly combed, but he looked like himself, no more hiding. Leah stood beside him in a modest dress, her eyes shining with pride. His heart pounded, but when he glanced at Leah, he felt courage. He spoke first. His voice was calm, clear, honest. "Thank you for coming. I have something to share. I have spent years building a network that helps children, families, and communities in need. I did this without tying it to my family's name because I wanted to focus on people, not reputation." He paused. "I hold a majority share in this network. I know this surprises many of you. I ask for your understanding." Leah stepped forward and added her own words. "I have seen the impact of this work. I have watched children learn, families grow stronger, and hopes shine brighter. Marcus did not build this to win praise. He built it because he believes that every life is precious. She smiled softly. I am proud to stand with him. Reporters asked questions, some sharp, some kind. Marcus answered honestly, even when asked why he had hidden the network. I wanted to protect it from politics and business, he said. I thought I could do more good that way. Leah nodded in agreement, adding, sometimes the right choice feels risky, but it is worth it. As they finished, the room was silent for a moment, then applause broke out. Cameras clicked furiously. Backstage, Leah and Marcus held hands, relief washing over them. They had faced the storm and chosen truth. That evening, Victor summoned them to the estate's drawing room. He sat in an armchair flanked by the family portraits of Harrington ancestors. Marcus and Leah entered, unsure of what to expect. Rose slowly, his face softer than before. You two were honest today, he said, and I saw how people reacted. They respected honesty more than control. Paused, then nodded. I was wrong to give you an ultimatum. See now that true strength comes from helping others, not from hiding behind wealth. Leah felt tears prickle at her eyes. Placed a hand on her back. Victor continued. I want to support your work. The family foundation will merge with your network. Together, we can do more, but on your terms. Marcus and Leah exchanged stunned looks, then gratitude filled their hearts. They stepped forward and thanked him. Outside, the wind rustled the trees in the garden, as if cheering them on. In the days that followed, news of the reconciliation spread. The public watched as the Harrington family embraced a new vision, combining corporate power with genuine compassion. Marcus's network gained more resources, and Leah's role as co-leader brought fresh ideas and warmth late at night. As Marcus and Leah walked through the greenhouse where they first discovered his secret work, they paused beneath the glass roof. Moonlight shone on the young shoots of plants he had grown there. Leah leaned into Marcus. We did it, she whispered. Marcus kissed her forehead. We did it together. They looked at the small plants, symbols of new life in that quiet garden. Their journey had taken them through doubt, fear, and betrayal. But they had emerged stronger, bound by love and truth. And as they stood there, they knew that the real power was not in any boardroom or news headline, but in the simple acts of kindness that changed the world one life at a time. The morning light filtered through the tall windows of the greenhouse, casting soft patterns on the young tomato plants. Leah and Marcus stood side by side, listening to the gentle drip of water from the automatic sprayer. Their merged foundation had its first official day, and they both felt a quiet thrill in their chests. No grand speeches were planned here, just honest work alongside people who needed help the most. They walked through the rows of plants that Marcus had tended since he was a boy. Each vine told a story of care and growth, much like the journey they had taken together. Leah reached out and touched a bright green leaf, marveling at its smooth surface. This place feels like home, she whispered. Marcus smiled, his eyes soft. It's where we started, and it's where we'll keep learning. A small team waited for them by the entrance, a group of local volunteers and a few board members. They offered warm greetings and eager hands ready to show Leah and Marcus the first project site, a community learning center that had once stood empty, walls crumbling and its garden overgrown. Together, they stepped outside into the fresh air, where a dusty path led to the old stone building. Children from the neighborhood gathered along the fence, shy but curious. Their clothes were simple, but their eyes sparkled with hope. When Leah and Marcus approached, the children broke into shy smiles, whispering among themselves. A young girl in a red headscarf stepped forward, clutching a worn tablet she used for her lessons. Welcome, she said, her voice steady.
Leah?
Knelt down to meet her, heart swelling. Thank you. We're here to help make this place shine for you. Marcus joined them, crouching to speak to a boy with a soccer ball under his arm. Do you like having a place to learn and play? He asked. The boy nodded vigorously. We didn't always, he said. But now we have books and games and art supplies. Marcus ruffled his hair and laughed. That's wonderful. Bring even more things soon. Leah and Marcus stepped inside the building. Dust danced in sunbeams through broken panes of glass. Volunteers pointed to cracked walls where colorful murals would go, and to piles of old desks waiting to be painted. Leah took a deep breath and ran her hand along a rough windowsill. She imagined bright curtains, soft carpets, and happy faces. "We can do this," she said quietly. Marcus squeezed her hand in agreement. Over the next week, a whirlwind of activity transformed the center. Marcus used his influence to secure donations of paint, books, and computers. Leah organized a team of artists to paint murals that told stories of courage, friendship, and dreams. Volunteers swept floors, planted flowers in the garden, and repaired benches in the courtyard. Every afternoon, Leah and Marcus joined the work, lifting heavy boxes, painting stripes on walls, sharing snacks with the children. One evening, as the sun dipped low, they stood back to admire the finished mural. A giant tree with branches reaching toward a bright sky, its roots deep in the earth. Children laughed as they climbed the low wall beneath it. Parents gathered nearby, proud and grateful. Leah felt tears prick her eyes. Marcus put his arm around her and whispered, "This is only the beginning." Word of the transformed center spread quickly. Local newspapers ran stories, and social media buzzed with photos of smiling children in their new learning space. People from other neighborhoods asked to volunteer, and small businesses offered supplies. Even major corporations pledged support after hearing how a billionaire's son and his wife had rolled up their sleeves to paint walls and plant gardens. Back at the estate, Victor watched the coverage with a thoughtful expression. He had once worried that Marcus and Leah's efforts were too small, too quiet to matter. But as he saw the joy in the children's faces, the blossoming community spirit, and the genuine gratitude of parents, he felt something shift inside him. He realized that real change happened one life at a time, not in boardroom deals or flashy ceremonies. At the next family dinner, the table felt warmer than before. Celeste, Marcus's stepmother, surprised them by asking detailed questions about the learning center and offering to host a fundraising dinner at her country home. Adam, Marcus's older brother, brought a group of his friends to volunteer painting, the final touches on the outdoor benches. Even the stern but loving grandmother Harrington shared stories of her own childhood. School and offered to knit colorful cushions for the reading nook. Leah and Marcus sat across from Victor, who raised his glass in a toast. "To my son and his wife," he said, voice steady, "who remind us that kindness and hard work can change the world." Leah and Marcus exchanged grateful looks.
Elias.
Hearts swelled. This moment felt like the true beginning of something far greater than either of them had ever imagined. In the weeks that followed, they launched the Beauty of the Heart campaign. Short videos showed children learning in fresh classrooms, families planting community gardens, and volunteers painting bright murals. Leah's gentle voice narrated each clip in simple English, sharing stories of hope and transformation. The campaign spread far and wide, inspiring people in cities across the country to start their own community projects. On a bright Saturday morning, Leah and Marcus visited a women's cooperative they had helped fund. The women wove colorful scarves and embroidered cloth, sharing laughter and songs as they worked together. Leah sat with a young mother, guiding her fingers over a needle for the first time. The woman's eyes shone with pride as she tied a neat knot. Marcus stood by, handing out cups of sweet tea, and joined in their laughter. Later that day, Marcus visited a group of teenage boys who had formed a soccer team with new uniforms he had provided. He cheered from the sidelines as they played, feeling the thrill of being a part of their joy. When the final whistle blew, he walked onto the field, high-fiving each player. "Great game," he called, and the boys beamed. As dusk settled, Leah and Marcus sat on a low wall outside the field, watching the children leave with their families. Leah rested her head on Marcus's shoulder. "I still can't believe how far we've come," she said softly. He kissed her hair. "Neither can I, but I know we're exactly where we need to be." On their first wedding anniversary, they celebrated back in the rose garden, where Marcus had first proposed. The lanterns were replaced with strings of fairy lights, and a simple dinner was laid out on a wooden table beneath an old oak tree. Leah's grandmother joined them, bringing a small cake she had baked herself. They laughed, told stories, and toasted to a year filled with challenges, growth, and love. After the cake was cut, Leah stood to speak. Her voice was clear in the quiet night air. 1 year ago, we promised to keep seeing each other truly no matter what the world thought. Tonight I see that promise come alive in every child. We've helped every family we've eased and every life we've touched. Marcus nodded, pride shining in his eyes. And I promise to keep building on what we've started with you by my side. Months later, they launched a scholarship. Fund for talented students who could not afford higher education. Each recipient received a grant along with a handwritten letter from Leah and Marcus, encouraging them to follow their dreams. The first group of scholars gathered in the newly restored community center, their faces bright with hope. Leah spoke to them about courage and kindness, while Marcus handed out certificates with a smile. As the seasons changed, the garden outside the learning center blossomed with new flowers. Bees hummed among the blooms, and birds built nests in the trees. Leah and Marcus often returned to sit on the old marble bench, watching the world they had helped create grow richer and more vibrant with each passing day. One afternoon, as sunlight danced through the leaves, Leah closed her eyes and thought about everything they had learned. She realized that the richest legacy was not wealth or fame, but the acts of kindness that built stronger hearts and stronger communities. She turned to Marcus, who was sketching a plan for their next project, a mobile art studio on wheels that would bring creativity to remote villages. She reached for his hand and whispered, "Wherever we go next, let's always remember this moment." He looked up and smiled. Always. They sat in comfortable silence, feeling the steady pulse of life around them. And in that quiet garden, under the gentle light of a late afternoon sun, they understood that their greatest lesson was simple and true. Real beauty comes from the heart, and the power of kindness can change the world one life at a time.